Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into combines, college combines, and the NFL. Our guest today is Matt Reamer. He is the Senior Manager, Player Operations with the NFL, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so Matt, I usually start my guests, where you went to college, so where'd you go to school?
Yeah, I grew up in Delaware. So University of Delaware just seems like such a natural fit for me, especially coming out of high school. The majority of my friends went there, and it was just a great place to go, and it was where I kind of grew up watching the sports, and I remember going to the football games with my dad and things like that, so it was just a natural fit there.
So let's just go back in time a little.
Sure.
In high school, when did you think about going to college? Was it freshman year of high school, senior year? When did it all begin for you?
Yeah, it was always kind of the back of my mind that wanted to go to college. It was always kind of a thing in our household that, that was the expected way to go. So I guess we really started preparation my sophomore to junior year.
Okay.
Unfortunately, looking back now, and what I would love to tell my younger self, I wish you would have prepared harder, but that was really when I started that process.
So were your parents involved? Did you go visit a lot of schools? How did it all work?
It was pretty much Delaware was the place, was my choice. Unfortunately, looking back, I think it was kind of influenced by a lot of my friends and family, staying close. I knew a lot of my friends were going there as well. So it was really determined, like, that's where I was going to go. I didn't look at any other colleges. I did kind of explore some other colleges, but some of them were a little above my range for my GPA and the price range, unfortunately. But I was happy with the choice of Delaware, and like I said, friends there and things like that.
So you go to University of Delaware. Do you do any extracurricular activities? What's the school like? Tell me about your experience there.
Yeah, no, I loved Delaware. It's a smaller campus. I didn't do any extracurricular activities, and I wish I had. I did a lot in high school, but going to school in the small town, we did a lot of the basketball games. We went to a lot of the football games. We were active that way, but I wish, looking back, and what I tell people is get more involved when you're on campus because you're there only for a short time.
Sure. So now you graduate. How does one graduate from University of Delaware and ends up becoming the Senior Manager, Player Operations for the NFL?
It's an interesting story, and it's not exactly the most traditional way. After school, like a lot of people, I was struggling to kind of see where I fit in, what I wanted to do, and I was kind of bouncing around doing some retail work. I went to work for a film studio for a little while in Philadelphia, and I decided that I really just wanted to kind of take a chance and move to New York and see what the city had to offer. I started work at a temp position, bouncing around different career opportunities, and I got a call about a program for youth football in the inner city that they needed somebody to kind of come in and at that point fill orders and help manage the inventory. And I didn't know it was for the NFL. It was something I was interested in. Sports, growing up, I played all kinds of different sports. So it was definitely something I was interested in, and I got a call a week later from my job recruiter who said the NFL wants to interview you, and I at the time thought he was joking around. I was like, I don't know, my arm's pretty sore, and it took me a second to realize that yes, this was an NFL program. So I got a temp job there for 9 months, and about 8 months in, they asked if I was interested in coming on full time, and now I'm entering my 10th season with the league.
Wow. So now tell me a little bit about the position. What does one do as a senior manager for player operations?
Yeah, with us, we kind of have our hand in a lot of the, we try to touch all aspects of the player's life, really starting with youth. We've gotten involved a lot with our legends, which are former players who are coaching. I've kind of been overseeing the creation of our Legends Community Coaches Network, where we provide different resources, grant opportunities, and professional development on the field and off the field, and really try to help make sure the game is being taught the right way. We launched our NFL Way to Play platform, which we've worked with the Legends and the Legends Advisory Committee to create a platform that shows how to properly teach football. So.
Wow. So who are some of the NFL guys that are now, I guess, coaches for this Legends?
Yeah, it's coaches that actually start all the way back at youth, and they go all the way to the professional ranks. So, yeah, we have coaches right now. We've identified almost 1,500 Legends who are coaching across all different levels of football. And we know there's more, and we're constantly trying to get out there and define them and provide them these resources. I think right now we have a little over 11,000 Legends in our overall Legends community.
Wow, fantastic. So you're basically giving them jobs after they finish up their NFL career.
We don't give them the jobs, but we try to give them the resources so when they're in a position that they're prepared, and we give them just the platform to help them get there.
Oh, okay. So let's get into combines.
Sure.
So you do combines at the college level for the NFL.
Yep.
Correct? So what is exactly entailed with a combine? How do you set it up with the college? Do all the colleges do it?
Well, most colleges will do pro days. With our bigger combine in Indy, we work with interior groups, our events department. We also work with like an outside group that helps us do all the on-field pieces, that sets up all the tests and the drills. One of the things that our group specializes in with the Legends is we set up mentors for these young college players who are coming in to test, to really help them through a stressful week where they're getting interviewed by clubs, they're going through and doing their medicals, they're doing all their tests on field. So it is a daunting piece, and we connect them with a former player, a Legend, and also a current player to kind of talk them through what to expect. Give them advice if they don't test as well as they thought. Give them some advice when they're talking to the clubs or the media and things like that. So that's the combine that's in Indianapolis.
That's the main combine.
Yeah. Then we also do our regional combines, which are smaller combines, and they're hosted primarily at clubs. Unfortunately, we didn't run them in 2020, just with everything with the pandemic. But we'll work with the club. They'll set up and they'll come in, and you have guys who they can sign up and they test. We'll bring them in for a 2-day piece where we'll have a former Legend come in, talk to them about the process, and talk to them about their career as they're starting out as college athletes, going into the NFL, and as well as other options that if they don't make a roster but they're still interested in sports, what other options are there to be on the field, and some of that's coaching, some of that could be officiating, or how to transition into sports into like the NFL office or at a club level.
So now, is it 4 different regional combines that you're doing, one on each coastline, north, south, east, west, or is it more big Division I colleges that are doing it, and then that's it?
No, traditionally there's been several. I think it's being reevaluated going forward just with everything coming out of this pandemic. But we see a lot of the guys from the smaller schools, and like Adam Thielen, wide receiver for the Vikings, he actually came through our regional combine process where he didn't go to the combine in Indianapolis, but the club scouts came out. They'll talk to some of the guys after and call them, sometimes they call them the diamonds in the rough, where they may have not been on people's radar, but they come out and test with us, and they've been able to find some good guys.
Wow. So give me so is it a week-long everywhere? Give me a sense of what the week-long is.
Yeah, the week-long is with Indianapolis, and it's a pretty big piece where they'll have the opportunity.
Do you have to get invited first? Or?
Yes, that's an invite process.
An invite.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. With our regionals, in the past they've done it an open invite, and then we've also done it where we've helped identify the next kind of batch of guys that weren't invited to Indy, and we've worked with them and their agents to get them over to whatever area we're doing it in.
Okay, so what is entailed in the week? Do they start out with physicals? Everybody comes in, doctor's there, and they start
they'll do
measuring them.
They'll do a lot of the medical piece. You always the funny picture of Tom Brady where he comes in and he's kind of standing there and looking all scrawny in his underwear and turns as they get a look at what you look like and make sure there's no underlying medical issues. They'll work the prospects will work with the clubs where they'll talk to the guys. They'll get to be interviewed by the clubs one-on-one. They work with us with their mentor group. We check in with them and we put the Legends mentors and the current players. They'll work with them all week, kind of give them, like I said, the advice, anything that they need, and try to just assist them as they go. They'll do the bench press. They'll work with the media. And then, of course, the big thing is their on-field testing, which everybody tunes into.
Right. And that's what, just speed, throwing, running?
Yeah, they'll do, they'll run the 40, they'll do the broad jump, they'll do verticals, they'll do, different position-specific drills, and really gets a look at the guys up close for the scouts. It gives them a little bit of, if they had questions and things like that on those guys, see how they move.
So how about the regionals? Are they the same as the one in Indy? Or are they a little bit different?
No, they're a smaller version, but yeah, they'll run the same kind of drills.
Is it a week long as well?
It's not. It's traditionally we've brought the guys arrive the night before. We'll do a lot of their like height, weight, their measurements prior. Then we'll do a mentoring session with one of our legends, and then the next day they'll do all the on the field workouts throughout the day. So where Indianapolis kind of spaces it out, and you'll have different groups going different nights and things. With the regionals, we had them go all through the day.
So with the regionals, how do they find them? How does a kid from, let's say, a Division III school or a Division II school, how do they find those regionals? Do they have to just talk to the coach, or is it somewhere that they look up?
Yeah, actually, a lot of places or a lot of prospects get recommended to us by coaches, or we've worked with a little combine committee who helps us identify guys that maybe were on that next list, working with some former NFL general managers to help identify and give these guys an opportunity to showcase themselves.
So now these players come in, they're uninvited at these regional ones. They're just showing up.
We'll get them to register prior, so yeah, we'll know who's going to be there because we assign numbers. We'll do a book so that the scouts have it, that they can write their notes and things on, so they'll identify and where they've gone to school and their position and everything like that.
So now, are there a lot of guys that go to those regionals?
In the past, yes. We had it a long time ago that anybody could just sign up. So we were seeing an interesting variety of people coming through those. More recently, you had to have played, or you had to have been on the team that past season. Mm-hmm. So that's helped us to identify guys and make it more useful to the clubs. Okay.
So now, are they looking for specific types? So a guy that's 5'5", 150 pounds, is he good enough to make the NFL, or what do they need to be? Because there's a lot of people out there that are probably saying, hey, this sounds pretty good. I might be able to try out somewhere. But a guy like that's like 5'5", 150 pounds, does he have that ability?
It's all really about what the club is looking for and how it fits into their system. Certain clubs are going to look more for like the speed guys. So some of those smaller, fast guys is what they'll be looking for. But other clubs, they look for a big body guy who doesn't necessarily have the speed, but he has like the get up and go in the red zone. So it really. It just depends on like the clubs, the coaches, the schemes that they run. Wow. But we try to give everybody an equal opportunity to showcase their skills. Some guys are going to make it. Some guys aren't. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the business.
Well, how many people will they actually take from the combine and from those regionals?
Yeah, I think with the regionals, we've had a handful of success for guys who have made clubs. It's really hard to say. It's a low percentage of guys who they may get taken into training camp, but whether or not they make that final roster, we had a lot of guys who have cycled through like practice squads. There's not an exact number. It'll change each year, and it'll change what, like, really going back to what the clubs are looking for.
So now, give me a sense of how difficult it is, because a lot of people don't understand. From high school to college, the drop-off in a football player is pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
But the drop-off from the college player to the NFL is even more dramatic.
Yeah.
So the guys who are going to the Combine in Indy, those are the ones that are really going to get drafted in the NFL, right?
Yeah, I mean, they have the higher percentage. They're kind of the ones that have turned heads early on. People at the clubs have taken notice. And I think going back to what your point just there about how hard it is, one of the things when I first came into the league, working with youth football, we developed a leadership program where we would go to different club markets, work with high school students. And one of the things we would do is really just put those statistics down, and because it's at that time, again, this is probably 8 years ago, so I'm sure the statistics have changed a little bit. There was about 1.1 million kids playing high school football, and only 1% are going to make the NFL. So that's a very, very small. It's just such a small number. And one of the things we want to do is be realistic, and we always try to tell guys, make sure you make the most of school too, because the career in the NFL, even when you make it, it's very short. It's a very short window that like you're there for. But you see so many of these guys who go from high school to college, who think they're going to make the NFL, and then they come out and they don't, and now it's what if. That's why one of the things we always want to push is just the importance of the education.
So now, what is the way it works with the NFL? So you get drafted, if you get drafted.
Yep.
Is there another way of getting to the NFL without being drafted?
You could go as a free agent. So if you weren't drafted, a team could sign you as a free agent.
So they'd have to find you in one of those smaller combines that you just happen to go into?
Yeah, there's been a few things that have happened in the past. Sometimes you hear about it from time to time. Somebody sees a viral video of a person kicking 80 yards on a high school field, and they'll bring him in for like a workout, and they could sign him as a free agent. That's probably a rare thing to go through it, but some guys, they make a transition from other sports. Antonio Gates, for example, he transitioned from a basketball player into one of the best tight ends in the NFL history. So you just never know. But the more common way is going through that draft process, the combine process.
Yeah. So now, and then once you're in the NFL, there's a process of actually making the team. I mean, they're cutting a lot of people in the preseason. Mm-hmm. Because how many people are actually in the preseason on a team?
Yeah, I think at one point there's over 90, and then it gets reduced. And ultimately, you start your training camp, and then each week in the preseason, you start to see the rosters really start to come together. And then you have some practice squad spots for guys who don't make the final roster, but they're still on the practice squad. So there is quite a turnaround. And you'll see it, too, that there's teams that they love this guy. They love him, but they just don't have the space because of other needs on the team. So they'll get cut, and then they'll end up trying out for a different team. And you see that a lot, especially coming out of the preseason. You'll see a lot of guys who you may remember him on one team in the preseason, but then by week one, he may be starting for a different team.
So now all these kids in college that wanted to play or had the dream of playing and then don't end up playing, give the people a sense of what else is there out there, not just in the NFL, but sports in general. Mm-hmm. Are there other avenues? I mean, you took an avenue of taking basically a small position.
Yep.
Was it part-time?
It was a full-time position, but there was no guarantee of that I was going to stay. And one of the things, if you get the opportunity, make sure you run with it. So.
Yeah, so give a sense of what else is there? Is there other avenues that people can take once they finish up college, if they're not going to end up making the NFL or even any of the practice squads or anything?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's often overlooked is working with either coaching or in officiating. One of the things that we did was we used to have officiating academies where people who were just interested come in and learn the game, and they start at the youth level or work in like a high school game, and they work their way up that way. It's a way to stay involved. But people who know the game, as former players, giving back and working with coaching, even like working with some youth group centers and things like that who are just in need of coaches. And then of course, there's ways to get in to working for a team, working with the NFL. They have great intern programs, and working with clubs. They offer things for former players that are like scouting opportunities, coaching fellowships and things. So there's a couple different avenues for guys to stay involved.
So you got to like the travel aspect. You got to like moving around and seeing different parts of the country and so on. Now, is it also happening overseas? Do you see a lot of kids coming from different countries to come and play?
Yeah, actually, we've started really testing guys from other countries. We just did 3 years ago, we did a combine in Australia where we saw a lot of people who are rugby players, and not just Australia, coming from like the surrounding islands. They had an opportunity to come over and see how their skills in rugby would transition to the game in the NFL. So we tested out a lot of guys there. They did one recently in Germany where a lot of players from the different leagues all across Europe, and then still some people from Australia and Japan came over and tested there.
Wow, fantastic.
So they're doing a lot to help identify and grow the game internationally.
Yeah, absolutely. Will they bring back, I guess, the England game once the pandemic is over? Will they start doing that again?
Yeah, they'll be returning to London this year for, I believe, 2 games.
Wow, fantastic. So when you're in college and your focus is the NFL, the time frame with the NFL is about 3 years, 3.5 years.
Yep.
Not everybody is Tom Brady that plays until the age of 45 years old.
Yeah,
right?
They're still trying to figure that guy out.
So what are some of the places that kids can take in college that can still focus on sports? Are there some majors that kids can focus on? Is it like sports management a big thing these days?
Yeah, and actually it's continuing to grow. I know a lot of people who went that sports management route, and it's worked out well for them. I just know it's very, very competitive. But even going outside of the NFL, there are opportunities working with like the ESPNs, like the Fox Sports, or even getting your foot in the door if it's another league. If you just want to be involved in sports, working for something like the MLB, the NHL, the NBA, and starting to grow and network. So if they're 2 years down the road, you have an opportunity at a club, or you have an opportunity at the NFL. If football is your focus, take it. But really getting experience in a sports, if it's not just football, is so huge. A lot of people that I work with day to day have come from different backgrounds like that, where they got an opportunity to work in a different league.
So now this legends that you talk about, were they all players at one time in the NFL, even if they were just maybe secondary players? Yeah,
everybody, if you've ever played in the NFL, you're an NFL legend. And you see, there's a lot of different careers that have happened. We have our legends community that have some guys who may have been a year in, and we have some guys who have played 15, 16 years. But the thing they always talk about is the brotherhood of just putting on like the helmet. And really, with that legends community, we brought those guys together to help support each other and just be a place where you can come in and tell those game stories and just feel like you're still a part of the NFL and the brotherhood there.
Yeah, so it's really the camaraderie and the network that you're trying to get throughout college as well as the NFL, because you know that there's always an end to this career.
Yeah.
Right? So give the people a sense of what networking really means.
Yeah, I think when I first came into the NFL, I started with youth football. And I had an opportunity to do a couple different things where I got to work with the broadcast team on some games. I got to work with the officiating group. And it provided me an outlet where when there was something that came up that might be an interest, I would get pulled into that, or I would get an email that said, "Hey, Matt, I think this is something that you might be interested in. You might want to take a look at." Or I got involved with the Pro Bowl, with the draft, and which has been great because going back to what I talked about, the player operations piece and being with those players their entire career. We see these guys coming through the combine. Then we have the guys at the draft and working with them. And then you work with them throughout their whole career doing different things. I do a lot with the Pro Bowl, so you see those guys there. And then when they retire, they become part of that Legends community. So you build this lifetime of trust with these guys. So when they have issues, they have questions, they know who to go to and really help support them all the way from college to the end of their career.
So we're coming to the end of our show, and usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to students that are going to college and then eventually maybe want to go to the NFL? What advice do you want to give to those students?
Yeah, like I said before, I think it's always great to have that goal, but always put the time in on the field, but also put the time in the classroom, because you just don't know whether it's the end of your career is going to be college, if it's going to be training camp, if it's going to be 15 years into the NFL. And I think looking back, I wasn't always the best student. I've had an opportunity to go back and work with some of these guys in colleges and talk to them and make sure that stay geared in both on and off the field. So I think that's really what I would say. Just always continue to focus on that education piece.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. Yeah. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.